Welcome to Startup Demo Day. It's nice to see everybody. I know we still have some folks logging in, but I want to make sure that we give all of our presenters ample time to present. Hopefully all of our panelists have logged in. I know we still have a couple more people coming on, but go ahead and get started. So my name is Susie Ingwall. I am with Red Crow. We are an Alera Health company. We have a private equity crowdfunding platform for healthcare only. We do two types of crowdfunding here at Red Crow. We do Reg CF, which is traditional, what you would think of as traditional crowdfunding. We also do what's called a Reg D 506C type of campaigns. And those campaigns are set up very similar to what you might see a private accredited investor fund look like, but that they are public campaigns on our site. So that's kind of the difference between the two. I'm not going to go too deep into what we do today because I really want to allow all of our great startups to present. So with that, I'm just going to review a little bit of housekeeping before we get started so everyone kind of knows the lay of the land. So with this, a couple of things to note. This event is conducted as a Zoom webinar. So if you are an attendee, you will not be able to turn on your microphones or video, but you can raise your hand and I can allow you to do so if you want to ask a question verbally. You may also use the chat or the Q&A to ask questions, and we'll be sure to get to those questions and answers. This event is being recorded and we will send out a link post-event, usually within about 24 hours. I have to make some edits typically to the beginning and end when there's a little bit of extra chatter going on, but we will get that done and get that out to everyone. I know we have some people that registered that aren't able to attend today that want copies of that video. For our presenters, please don't reveal anything proprietary that you don't want recorded if you don't have it already secured. So with that, we will be doing presentations and polls here in just a couple of minutes. Our partner today is the American Medical Association Physician Innovation Network. We'll let Amanda say a couple of words before our presenters start. But after each presentation, including the AMA presentation, we'll send a poll out to each one who, to every single attendee that's attending today, so that if you want to be connected directly with any of our startups, you can be connected directly with them. So just answer that poll when it pops up on your screen. Pretty easy to do. I already addressed Q&A. We will also have a post-event survey. And then the last thing that I really want to mention is Red Crow as an organization, we have two different sides to our platform. We have what's called Discover Supernovas, as well as live investments on the platform. So each startup that you're going to see today is in a little bit of a different place with their raise. All of the companies can be found on Discover. Some of them have started our due diligence process, and some of them are actually complete with their due diligence process. Darby will put a link to each company in the chat as they present in case you want to learn a little bit more about them. But just know that they're all in different stages of the event. And so we always encourage you to do, obviously, even if they've been through our due diligence process, we always encourage you to do your own due diligence as you move forward. But that said, the other nice thing about our site is that our due diligence process consists of not only a business review, but also a scientific review of every company that goes live on the investment side of our platform. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to talk to us a little bit about the American Medical Association Physician Innovation Network. So Amanda, go ahead and take it away.
Mute. I was on mute. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Good. All right, great. Let me just get this into present mode so you're not seeing the whole screen. It's great to see everyone today. Susie, Darby, all of Red Crow team, thanks so much for inviting me to join today. I'm thrilled to be able to share with this community what we have built through the Physician Innovation Network. And the AMA's desire to help connect the physician voice into the innovation space and into that world. We know that there's a lot of physician and entrepreneurs out there, but we also know that there's a lot of physicians in clinical practice who can lend their voice and provide feedback to solution designers as they're building. And so in 2016, and then again in 2019, we actually researched what are the core key questions that physicians are asking in the development of new technology. And this is probably not a surprise to most of you who have been in this space for a long time, but those four key questions are, does it work? Will I receive proper payment? And again, how? And what does this look like? And will I be liable, and how will it work in my practice? We actually just released an additional level of research. Oops, I skipped too many slides. In 2022. So we surveyed another subset of physicians. And I'm sharing this because this is the scannable version of the Digital Health Research of 2022. It was released just last week. If you want to just scan that QR code, you absolutely can. You can take your time to read this. It is a bit lengthy, and I flashed this up here just to share some key insights. It is posted on the Physician Innovation Network, which I'll share a little bit more about, but just want to make sure that we share this hot off the press. The core goal of the AMA's involvement in the innovation space and through the Physician Innovation Network is really to make sure that technology is leveraged as an asset and not creating an additional administrative burden to our physicians. So what we built just about 5 years ago was a connection point between physicians and entrepreneurs, which sounds great. It's a matchmaking kind of platform, but we felt like that was lacking the other voices in the space that really need to be heard in the development of new technology as well. So the new iteration of the Physician Innovation Network includes all innovators. And you can see here the bullet points. We include care team members, academics and faculty members, investors, caregivers, patients, patient advocates, and many more, as you can see. It starts with connections. So the ability for innovators, or really anyone, to post a question on the platform that says, hey, this is what I'm building. I built an organizational profile to kind of show you what it is. I have a question about it. And that question could be answered in an online survey, a phone call, which is pretty brief and probably just introductory, could go all the way to, I need an advisor or I need a co-founder in this space. And Red Crow actually has a fully dedicated space on the Physician Innovation Network called a collaborator page. And I won't go into all the details of the platform and demo it for you right now, because I really want to get to the presentations that you all have prepared for today. But I will share a QR code for the Physician Innovation Network itself and 4 major opportunities for you all to take. One, if you build an individual profile page, that kind of showcases who you are, all the different innovation roles, hats that you wear. You might be a physician and an investor. You might be a patient advocate and a caregiver. And we want people to be able to show up holistically that way. The organizational profile allows you to show up as your company or nonprofit, and include your team members to also build the thought leadership of your organization itself outside of what you do, maybe in a consulting capacity or other influences. You have the ability to affiliate with the Red Crow community. As a collaborator of PIN, Red Crow has that dedicated space that I mentioned, and that allows other folks to find you and say, okay, so Red Crow invited this company into their space. They've gone through that due diligence that Susie has mentioned. I'm going to look at them before some of the others that are crowding my view right now. And we get that question from physicians a lot. Hey, I'm inundated by companies that are trying to talk to me. Who are the best? And as the AMA, we can't really say that. We have to rely on our industry partners to identify who are those that are leading the way and what is best in practice. But we do offer virtual panel discussions on the platform around niche topics. So feel free to check that out as well. We do have one coming up around women's health. So anyone interested in that, be sure to tune in on the 26th. And then connect with me. I'd be happy to help you navigate your next steps on the Physician Innovation Network. So with that, I will stop sharing and turn it right back to Susie and team.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amanda. So for those of you who are attending today, you'll see that Darby posted a poll. Please feel free to fill that out. And if you want to be connected with AMA PIN, we will make sure that they get your information so that they can connect with you. With that, the next presenter on our list is Actuated Medical. And Actuated can be found on our Discover platform. They've almost completed our due diligence process. The interesting thing about Actuated too is they have several products already on market. But today they're going to be talking to us about NeuroGlider, which is their revolutionary neural implant inserter that reduces insertion trauma and improves placement accuracy. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Maureen and team.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Maureen Mulvihill, and I'm President and CEO of Actuated Medical. And I'm here today to talk about our neuroglider insertion system that enables precise placement of electrodes into the brain. Well, in 2007, my father-in-law was a very strong man, and he loved playing with his grandkids. And he would put his 2-year-old granddaughter in a big Rubbermaid bucket and swing her all over the living room, and the two of them would cackle and have such a good time. 2 years later, when my son was 2 and was ready for the bucket ride, his tremors from his Parkinson's had gotten so bad that he was very uncomfortable, and he wasn't willing to swing his grandson around the room. And then over the next 8 years, the tremors from Parkinson's got so bad, and the drugs they gave him had so many terrible side effects that really affected his quality of life. We need to do better for people that have neurological conditions like my father-in-law. We know that 100 million Americans suffer from neurological and musculoskeletal disorders. We know that it affects the healthcare system of $800 billion to take care of these patients. And we know that the United States government and governments around the world really want to understand the brain so that we can treat these neurological conditions. One avenue is to put electrodes into the brain so that you can decrease those tremors of Parkinson's, so you don't need all of those medications with those terrible side effects. Or maybe you want to give somebody with prosthetics the ability to control his prosthetic from his brain. This is actually one of the electrodes that's FDA cleared, and we'll call it a little small bed of nails. So it's about a 10 by 10 array with little needles, and you can see how small they are because it's up against this penny. However, there's difficulties putting these electrodes in the brain. This 10 by 10 bed of nails electrode uses high force air to get it into the tissue, which then causes the brain tissue to dimple. So it doesn't get to the precise location it needs to be at, and also causes hemorrhaging. And that blood that comes out, the body gets angry. We'll say it's called the foreign body response. And the body gets angry and says, that shouldn't be here. And it actually attacks the electrode and decreases its lifetime. So there's lots of researchers across the country and across the world that are developing electrodes that even mimic the brain a little bit more. And this is an example of one. It's just a single shank electrode, but it's very flexible. And the issue with it is it's hard to get into the brain tissue. As you can see in this image, it buckles. The neuroglider inserter uses ultrasonic energy. And if you watch the video, this is one of those single shank electrodes. And with neuroglider, it goes straight in. But without neuroglider, you can see that it bends and it dimples that tissue. The neuroglider has already been shown that it can put in that bed of nails electrode. And with DARPA funding, we developed this technology and we commercialized it. And with NIH, Small Business Innovation Research funding, we've made our system compatible right now with 13 other electrodes that are out there that researchers are using across the country and across the world. So the idea is NIH is funding us to make our system compatible with more people studying the brain. This is our competition. This is that high force air pressure that puts that 10 by 10 or that bed of nails electrode into the brain. As I said, we lack precision. We get the bleeding, the extra tissue trauma, and then the body attacks this electrode. It's also only compatible with one electrode, where I just told you right now we're compatible with at least 13. We have sales. We have 12 neurogliders that have been sold to various research labs across the country, one to Germany, one to Belgium. So we actually have international sales. And with that SBIR, we have 6 partners, these 6 laboratories. They're either using it in preclinical studies or they're using it on bench, just to prove that we can use neuroglider to put in more and more electrodes. We know that the brain-computer interface market is large. It's projected to go to $2.4 billion. And our goal is to use that SBIR and other funding that we have to build the preclinical sales, which are building that safety and efficacy data to go to the FDA. At the same time, we're applying for additional funds from NIH to develop a smaller compact unit for the human aspect or for human testing. We're already engaging clinical partners. We're also engaging brain-computer interface companies. The idea is to have a system that works with their brain-computer interface system. They have a large clinical study. They prove that a superior technology or superior results, they license that technology for a specific clinical indication. And because of that, there's multiple exits or multiple licensing opportunities for NeuroGlider. We are seeking a $2.5 million equity investment through the Red Crow private equity portfolio to support our commercialization activities. Our revenue increases steadily up to 2029, where we anticipate 2 licensing exits for NeuroGlider, and then a large medical company that acquires actuator for our neural device portfolio. We are medical device innovators. We have 21 employees that love coming to work and love what they do. We have over 38 US and international patents. This is my incredible team. My Director of R&D, Roger Bagwell, is on the call to answer any questions. We have a Director of Quality Assurance Regulatory Affairs. We do reimbursement, and we have a neural device leader. My board of directors, we have expertise from J&J, Teleflex, and we have a medical doctor, a CMO, Fred Brown. This is my incredible team. They love what they do, and we love to share anything with you. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Fantastic presentation, Maureen. I'm always just so impressed with what you and your team have built. It's just amazing to me. So congratulations on everything that you've done. If any of our attendees have any questions, please feel free to either post it in the chat or raise your hand and I can turn your mic on so that you can speak. In the meantime, I know that Darby started the poll for Actuated Medical. So if you would like to connect with them after this event, please let us know. And we'll make sure that we connect you guys together. I don't see any hands up yet. So if once our next presenter starts, if you decide that you have a question that you would like to ask Maureen or her team or Roger for Actuated, please feel free to post it in the chat. They'll be kind of keeping a lookout to see what questions pop up in there. So with that, I will go ahead and share my screen again. Maybe, if it will let me. There we go. So our next presenter is Noah from Lutris. Lutris is a really cool technology. Our next 3 companies all are doing something in the cancer space. So Lutris is working to improve anti-cancer therapy by reducing dose-limiting side effects, which we all know is very much needed. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Noah.
Okay, so actually, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Ben Korn. I'm the Chief Medical Officer of the company. I'm here with Dr. Noah Shelach, who's going to be running the slides for me, and we're very enthused about this great opportunity to present. So we represent Lutris, which is a tagline of improving anti-cancer therapy by reducing dose-limiting side effects. I'm an oncologist myself. I've been a clinician now for 30 years. I've been in the biotech space for about 20 years. And I think that this is a unique opportunity because it's the interface of quantity of life, extending survival, for instance, and quality of life. And we'll show you how those two are intertwined. Next slide, please. So in terms of corporate highlights, you'll see that we are a phase 2 clinical stage company. We have 2 significant unmet medical needs. Again, as a cancer doctor, I can tell you this is something we face day in, day out in the clinic. One is the rash from the most popular type of therapy for colon cancer, which are called EGFR inhibitors. And the second is the rash from radiation. We're potentially looking at a $1 billion market, $1 billion market. We have a very cool scientific platform with a new paradigm that allows us to address these 2 medical needs that I'm talking to you about. We have compelling phase 1 results that have been published in one of the top cancer journals called Cancer Discovery. We have an active pipeline, and really the 2 geniuses behind this are Anthony Ribas, who is a professor in multiple departments at UCLA, and Dr. Shelach, who is also a PhD in biology and a business person who is heading the company. Next slide, please. So effectively, the pipeline is quite robust because you can see 2 impressive sets of forward progress. Our main compound is called LUT14, and you can see how we use the EGFR inhibitor to treat the acneiform rash. We're now in advanced stages of a phase 2 trial. And likewise, we've completed a phase 1 trial for the indication of radiation dermatitis. So we're moving forward on both fronts. Next slide, please. Now, why is this so important? I'm starting with the focus on the rash from EGFR inhibitors in colorectal cancer. Because colorectal cancer is very common in the Western world. This isn't some rare disease. This is one of the top 3 or 4 malignancies that we confront. And lots of money, billions of dollars are spent on EGFR inhibitors. And 3/4 of patients who get these drugs, which are potentially curative drugs, suffer this kind of a rash. And the rash can cause patients and physicians to stop using a curative drug. And that's the tragedy. Next slide, please. So here you're seeing a perfect example of how this thing really works. This is from our initial work, which is all in our top cancer centers. And you can imagine how if you were taking a cancer drug and you had this rash, which is evident on your face or other parts of your body that are exposed, you'd have embarrassment. And you might have itching and you might have pain, and you might not want to go on with your cancer therapy. That might sound counterintuitive to you, but in the real world, this is the case. Patients are willing to forfeit a chance for extending their survival because of this kind of a picture. And our compound can clear up this kind of a problem. Next slide, please. So in fact, you see here data which shows that 32% of cancer physicians, my colleagues, who participated in a survey, report that they either outright discontinue the drug, or even more, will lower the dose of this drug. And so it can't be effective against this cancer therapy. So here you see this linkage of quality of life and quantity of life that I was discussing before. What sounds like just a simple skin rash is not that if you're the patient who gets it. And in fact, the patients who are most likely to get the skin rash are the ones who are most likely to respond to the anti-cancer drug. In fact, it was even a marker of response to the anti-cancer drug. So here you are doing well with your anti-cancer therapy, you get the rash, and then you can decide in many cases, as many patients do, I'm not going to take my anti-cancer drug because I don't want the rash. And that's because until now, there was no solution to the rash. Next slide. So in our initial study, which as I mentioned to you before, was published in one of the top cancer journals, you can see the results on this patient with this obvious rash on the neck and upper torso. And just with using a little bit of the compound, you can see that what's called a grade 2 response was quickly reduced to a grade 1, and later to almost no evidence of the rash at all. And what's even more exciting is that there's no dose-limiting toxicity that's been reported. There are very tolerable adverse events, and very little of this compound, which is a very comfortable to apply gel, gets into the blood circulation, so it doesn't cause systemic toxicity either. And we've learned this from top cancer centers around the world. Next slide, please. This is in fact our phase 2 study that we're running right now. The beauty of this trial is that it not only has randomization between different concentrations of the drug that are effective, there's also a placebo control. And even if you're randomized to the placebo, you can still get our drug. Next slide, please. This is another example of a response. Next slide, please. The radiation dermatitis is also an indication. Next slide, please. Many patients who get radiation therapy have a rash as well. And on the next slide, please. You can see that we have a comprehensive portfolio, which includes responses to the drug used for colon cancer, radiation itself. Both of these cause skin reactions. We have a robust pipeline of patents with protection of our compounds. And we think we have a clear path moving forward. Next slide, please. So clinical stage programs in developing, a large market with lots of upsides, a very cool scientific technology, lots of know-how, and a very good relationship with the FDA that is interested in following us and seeing how we can move this forward. Next slide, please. We hope to hear from you. We truly want to stay connected with you. We think this is a great opportunity.
Fantastic presentation. Thank you so much. Darby will go ahead and launch the poll. And if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat. For me, like the two things that you just said about 32% of people stopping the drug or lowering the dose is just heartbreaking, especially knowing that the other staff that you mentioned is they're the ones who can benefit from it the most. it's really hard to hear. So I'm so thankful that you guys are working in this space and doing something to help prevent that from happening. If nobody else has any questions, I will go ahead and share my screen. Our next presenter is also working in the cancer space. It's Alan with Navigation Sciences. And Navigation Sciences is working on real-time margin measurement for precision cancer surgery, which I think we can all agree is also a really big deal. So Alan, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Susie, and thank you to the Red Crow group. Let me just get my slides up here. Hopefully you can all see that. And thanks to the Red Crow group and helping us guide us through getting onto the Supernova. We've just recently been added to your platform. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about Navigation Sciences and what we're doing in the margin measurement in precision cancer surgery, particularly as it relates to soft tissue resection in lung cancer. Our first product relates specifically to identifying and locating lesions in the lung for doing a wedge resection. So recently, Medicare has been funding the screening in low-dose CTs of patients who are at high risk for lung cancer. This has identified a number of small lesions less than 2 centimeters in size for surgical resection, but it's often very difficult to locate those lesions within the lung and do a targeted resection itself. The standard of care for lung cancer is surgical removal of typically a lobectomy or segmentectomy. But we want to gravitate to do wedge resections or do more wedge resections minimally invasively by actually getting a safe margin, but reduce the complications revolved around taking large sections of lung, particularly in patients that have already compromised lung volume. And we do this by placing an electromagnetic sensor or a fiducial marker in close to where the lesion is, and then using the electromagnetic sensor on the cutting instrument, actually in real time being able to give the surgeon information or data related to how far they're away from the lesion and the margin itself. We have developed a couple of approaches for placing the electromagnetic sensor. One is just by feel or touch, but also by a method of navigating to that lesion with a needle and placing that electromagnetic sensor right into where the lung tissue is located. We also recently received a NCI, National Cancer Institute grant of $400,000 to develop a bronchoscopic delivery of our electromagnetic sensor. So you could actually place the sensor preoperatively in the endoscopy suite and then bring the patient to the operating room to actually remove the lesion and guide the surgeon to where that location is. I'm happy to say that we recently completed a 25-patient clinical study under an IDE, Investigational Device Exemption, with the FDA. And we did that at a single site at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. The end result of that will be presented in January at a major medical meeting. But I can tell you that we've proved that we can do real-time measurements interoperatively, that the distances that we measured correlate very effectively with what the pathology lab sees in the path lab following the actual surgical resection, and that we met all safety and efficacy guidelines. The market opportunity is actually quite large. We don't see just lung cancer as our opportunity, but additional our liver, head and neck, brain, thyroid, and ultimately also breast cancer, where there's a significant amount of recurrences or local recurrence, but also a number of reoperations that are done to increase the size of the margin from the primary surgical resection. So we anticipate this as a significant opportunity for a number of soft tissue surgical applications. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we've done so far. To date, we've raised $4.5 million from individual and family funds. And with that, we've funded the development of our program to the clinical study point, and now are raising an additional $5 million, $7 million in the round. $2 million have already been closed, primarily from our existing investors, and seeking an additional $5 to actually close that round. That round will bring us to the FDA 510K market clearance, as well as a post-market multi-center clinical study, where at that point we anticipate that we should be able to exit the company. There are significant other businesses that would be interested in what we're doing in the minimally invasive surgical or endoscopy markets, the robotic surgical markets, as well as the imaging markets, some companies like Philips or Siemens, and the robotics intuitive surgical. All of these companies have expressed a significant amount of interest in the type of work that we're doing.
1 minute.
So I've reviewed with you a couple of those companies that we think that have a significant interest in what we're doing, and we've already initiated discussions with a number of them, both to do some clinical study work, as well as ex vivo labs with them as they're observing the type of activities that we're involved in. So the technology was developed at the Brigham and Women's Hospital. We took a license on this roughly about 3 years ago. My co-founders are the two inventors of it. We also have an advisory board, both in the neuro, thoracic, and pulmonary space, as well as the liver. So we have good advisors in all the potential marketplaces that we anticipate bringing the products to. And with that, I think I'm maybe about 30 seconds before the end, and hopefully there's a group of questions that you all may have.
Anybody have any questions for Alan or Navigation Sciences? Fantastic presentation. I will keep an eye out for raised hands for another minute or so. If anybody does have questions again after the fact, please feel free to place that in the chat. We have we have another company that's working in the cancer space coming up, and then we're going to shift gears. But please welcome Curiva. Edis will be talking about cervical cancer diagnostics. So they've got a non-invasive and about a 300 times faster solution than that of a pap smear. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it on over.
Thank you, Susie, so much, and thanks for the opportunity to have me here presenting. Our co-founders actually on the chat as well, and we'll be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, either of us. So here, let me share my screen and our presentation. Oh. So it's coming up. Okay, let me make sure I have controls here. All right, perfect. So at Curiva, we believe real-time diagnosing is the best approach to cervical cancer prevention. I'm Edis Lima, founder and CEO. Current cervical cancer screening methods like the pap smear are antiquated and don't gather the necessary information for preventative cancer screening. And the pap smear misses 45% of the true positives. After receiving an abnormal pap smear, patients like my friend Ellie up here on the left might undergo an invasive biopsy to diagnose disease, sometimes known as, not sometimes known, it is the colposcopy. And so this is shown also in the numbers that you see here for all the cases that occur within the United States annually that are either lives that are impacted by cervical cancer or lost to cervical cancer or other gynecologic malignancies. And since there's no immediate option for diagnosis at the interface of the pap smear and the colposcopy, our product, DiaPatch, diagnoses at that immediate step at the point of care. So basically, our patch is worn by the patient on the pelvic region for access to lymphatics and biomarkers of interest. We provide fast results within 30 minutes of the clinical visit. So during the women's wellness exam every year. And then This is a minimally invasive product because we're utilizing a revolutionary technique and technology called microneedle arrays, which have a very unique polymerization reaction happening. And so along with our wearable, we're also providing the Ellie app, which would be the companion app, in order to help streamline physician workflows and increase the number of patients that they're seeing during the same visit, enhance patient education, and draw in the number of women that go on screen to date, which is 8 million women, as you saw in the prior slides. And of course, ease of referrals to gynecologic oncologists, so their next steps. Here we go. Our technology is composed of really our product is composed of two technology areas. So the microneedles have been tested in murine, porcine, and human studies. They're capable of adequately sampling 500 microliters after 30 minutes of application, and they can go upwards of 6 hours. As you can see here, it turns into a bubble already. So we currently have in-house a materials transfer agreement and 200 units of two different types of these microneedle arrays that have allowed us to begin our initial proof of concept studies. The next component of our DIA patch is the actual assay, which is a synthetic rival regulator. And this has been published translational data with murine, primate, and patient samples for diseases such as diabetes and Zika. So providing 98% sensitivity and 99.5 specificity, again, in the same day results approach. So the stage that our company is at is this minimum viable product pre-analytical device. As you can see, we have a functional 3D printed model. And this approach will allow us to give a data service, so provide a lot of information behind the biomarkers during clinical trials, and in addition to biotechnology companies that are willing to, or that are working on developing new therapeutics. The next stage of our product is the fully integrated diagnostics patch. And so that will detect biomarkers for cervical as well as ovarian cancer. And lastly, our beta product launch would be the wearable plus the companion app Ellie, which would be fully digitized. To date, we have filed our PCT patent. Both the inventors on it are our co-founder Tracy McGinnity, PhD, and myself. We also are negotiating a licensing agreement for the microneedle components. But as you can see, there's many areas in which we can grow. So right now we're really nailing down the proof of concept behind the microfluidics of the device, but the next stages will be biochemical, electrical, and of course, the app development for algorithm and AI. Strategic partnerships are being explored as we speak. So we're in discussions with Logic to seeing at what stage we could do a joint development agreement or eventually be acquired. Other companies that are of interest for meetings are Organon and Roche. And at the end of the year, I actually will be in Switzerland having discussions with Roche. Our market is quite large, it's up to $14.1 billion, where the initial adopters are those high-risk patients that have CIN2 or CIN3 stage cervical cancer, so meaning a lesion before it becomes a full tumor in the cervix. And that's up to 1 million patients, allowing for our initial market of entry to be $125 million. From there, we seek to evolve and enter the ovarian cancer patient space, as well as other women cancers such as breast cancer.
One minute.
Today, up to date, we have fundraised over $100,000. We've participated in several accelerators, including Tech for EVA, which is the one that will wrap up by the end of this year. And we also did the NSF I-Corp program. We've applied to an NIH SBIR grant, and we are re-applying for June for the next deadline here. This will be through the NCI. So the next stages from 2022 to 2024, I'll speak about here. So this is what the use of funds are needed for. $2 million to get us through the feasibility studies, the development of our minimum viable product fully, and the initial inflection point of a pilot study. So that's where all the funds will go. This is our incredible team, which is composed of both technical and business folks, as well as our advisory board. We're looking to generate over $7 million for year 3, with initial sales already during the research use only stages of the pilot studies. Investing in Curiva is a unique opportunity of a potential exit of up to 12x, according to our comparable companies. And this is a product value-based valuation. At Curiva, we believe cervical cancer is the one cancer we should not even be talking about. And DIA-Patch is the non-invasive, sophisticated first step to get us there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great presentation. So I have one follow-up question that other people might be thinking about and maybe are afraid to ask. You mentioned that you're working on a licensing agreement. Is that an exclusive licensing agreement, or are the microneedles and other components still available for licensing as well?
That is correct. That is an exclusive licensing agreement for the women's health area entirely. And that will be the case for the assay as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. If anyone else has any other questions, please feel free to raise your hand or ask them in the chat. I don't see any hands up quite yet. So let's go ahead and fill out the survey. Oh, I've got one. Gary, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, hi, Gary Golden. Can you hear me?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, just I'm interested, and from an investment perspective, is this an equity investment or is this a convertible note investment? What's the modality of the investment?
It would be via. I'm sorry.
Say that again.
For some reason. Echo. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I hear
If
you.
you have two computers turned on, if there's anyone else in your room, just have them mute, and you probably should be okay.
I do not. This is
okay.
Sorry.
Oh, you're not echoing anymore, so you're good. Okay.
Okay, good. Here we go. Yeah. So we are looking for that $2 million to be preferably via SAFE, but certainly open to doing an equity round as well. So it's just a matter of discussions.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay, well, with that, I'm going to introduce our next presenter. If anyone else has any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat for Curiva. But next up, we have PhysioPS. They are working on a patented FDA-cleared medical monitoring software for analyzing a person's autonomic nervous system. I can never say that word correctly, so apologies. But let's go ahead and turn it over to Steve. Go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Susie.
Sure.
And it is hard to pronounce, autonomic.
Yeah.
A lot of people call it autonomous, but there you go.
I'm tempted to every time, but I know it's not right.
Well, thank you, everybody, for this opportunity. Those were really hard acts to follow, so I hope we're just as impressive. So PhysioPS, we're a software as medical device that we measure the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system independently and simultaneously. We do have competition out there, but that's our patent, is that we can do it independently and simultaneously. So let's switch screens here. Here we go. So I'm just going to tell you about just a quick story about me and why I'm involved with this technology. Didn't really come from the medical industry per se, but I had a small telehealth company, and I ended up meeting this Dr. Colombo at a conference down in Jacksonville, and we got to know each other pretty well. So I set up an appointment to see him down in Philadelphia. He took me to one of his cardiologists where they were having a meeting. So they said, well, why don't we test you while we're in the meeting, which they did. And when it was done, they brought the results into the two doctors, and they said, well, we got good news and bad news. Good news is the Phillies are playing tonight and you're coming with us. The bad news is you have Widowmaker. So I didn't really know what Widowmaker was, but they explained it to me. So when I got back to New Hampshire, I went and saw my GP, showed him the test. He referred me to a cardiologist. Cardiologist looked at the test, said, okay, they gave me blood work and a stress test, and everything came back normal. Then I went back for an echo stress test, and that came back normal. So I called Dr. Colombo and Dr. Apache and said, hey, doctor says I'm absolutely fine. They said, no, it says clearly on the test, you need a calcium score test. Okay, so I told my cardiologist he would not order it because I had no symptoms. Insurance wouldn't cover it. It wasn't part of their protocol, blah, blah, blah. So I went and paid for it myself. And sure enough, I ended up with high calcium buildup in my coronary arteries. So basically I had 3 to 5 years to live or to have a stroke or be chronically ill. So it was a great opportunity for me to really take a hard look at this. So I put a deal together, presented it to the board of directors, and I took control of the company. So during that time with Dr. Colombo, we basically rebranded everything, rewrote the software, finished up a lot of the compliance stuff that they were lacking. And a lot of you might be asking at this point, what is the autonomic nervous system? Well, it is the automatic part of your body that just regulates everything from cardiovascular issues to gastrointestinal issues to anxiety, depression, you name it. Your autonomic nervous system is the one that controls all that functionality, right? So most of us don't even know. We just know when we go to sleep at night and we close our eyes, we keep breathing, our blood keeps pumping, everything seems to be working fine. Okay, so we have a kind of a motto, are you truly healthy or merely symptom free? And that's what's going on with your autonomic nervous system. It could still function just good enough, but maybe it's not really good enough to keep all systems go. Here's a little on the right here, blurb from one of our VA doctors. So a lot of good accomplishments here. We've got 2 patents, we've got FDA clearance, we're HIPAA compliant. We have 2 billing codes right now. We had a 3rd that we're fighting to get back, but we pretty much check all the boxes, so we're basically commercially ready. The system is basically, as I said, software as a medical device. We run it on a laptop with a vitals monitor. We capture ECG and respiratory rate along with blood pressure. And we put you through some breathing exercises. Most of the time you're sitting there relaxing. But the first one is a deep breathing, and then we put you through a Valsalva maneuver, which is a deep breath in, and you hold your breath and then release. And then the last part of the test is a stand-up part of the test where you don't know, we're going to tell you to stand up, but when we do, you have to stand up abruptly, and that tells us a lot about how your cardiovascular system is working. So the big problem out there is there's about 90 million people in the United States that suffer from autonomic dysfunction. Part of the problem with other solutions that are out there is they're very good at diagnosing the sympathetics, but then they have to guess on the parasympathetics, and guessing in the medical industry is probably not a great idea. You could over-medicate or under-medicate your patients, and a lot of patients are being told, hey, listen, you have autonomic dysfunction or POTS. Unfortunately, you have to live with it the rest of your life. All we can do is help you manage the symptoms. Well, our doctors have proven that theory wrong, and our success rate in treating these patients and getting them better is just incredible. So people that we're seeing, pardon? Oh,
1 minute.
Oh, okay, thank you. Here's a short list of some of the hospitals, doctors. We do have systems in the VA, and of course, doing a lot of research with University of Medical Schools. Our business model is pretty simple. You can buy, lease, rent, or do revenue share for our system. Typically, an average doctor will make about $156,000 more a year, plus all the other fees for additional testing and so on and so on. We actually have one doctor down in New Jersey. He's added $2 million to his bottom line by using our technology and opening up an autonomic lab. Like I said, our current competition, they're very good at certain things, but they can't measure both sides because we hold a patent for that. So they basically measure the sympathetics, but they have to guess on the parasympathetics. We're expecting to be about a $100 million company in the next 5 years. Not only is that our current technology, but it's also wearable devices that we have planned, AI, and a few other things. So basically what we're looking for right now is a $5 million raise for infrastructure. We've done all the hard work. Now we need the infrastructure to really get this thing to market and start working on some of the future developments that we have. We plan on outsourcing a lot of our R&D. And of course, manufacturing, we're going to outsource as well. So we're really just looking for money for the infrastructure to really build this thing out and generate revenues. Did I make it?
You did. Thank you very much. Fantastic presentation. It looks like we've got a hand up from Margaret. So go ahead and ask your question, Margaret.
Yes, this is Margaret Carlson, and you said you had 2 codes right now. Is this getting reimbursed by insurance, or where are you on that?
Yes. Yeah, 95921 and 95924,
Okay.
23. Sorry.
Great question. Any other questions? It looks like we've got another one, so go ahead.
Yeah, could this be a take home with the results being shared with the doctors? Is that something that's on your roadmap, given that it's a software, and it would reside on the phone as an app?
Yes, we're working on that right now. So a chest monitor wearable. We're working with a company out of India right now to supply that to us. Because what we need is a streaming ECG, and we need actual respiratory. So in order to do that, really, we need to get it across the chest. But we are working with Apple and Samsung. They're claiming they can give us the appropriate information. So then you'd be able to run it as an app. In the meantime, we have an app that we send home to patients, and they basically check their blood pressure at given certain points in time, and then we can tell whether they have autonomic dysfunction or not.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Perfect. We do have to move on to our next presenter. So if anyone has any questions, please feel free to go ahead and add those to the chat. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. So our next presenter, if you were part of our demo day last time, you probably saw Fluid IQ present. We asked them to come back this time because we wanted to do a special spotlight session on them as they have some updates. But this great team, John Bailey and Matt, have just been such a pleasure to work with. And their device is using fluidics to develop what's called their Hope Invent device. And it's the world's smallest handheld single-use 3D printed emergency resuscitator. And there's a lot of need for this. I think if you guys have ever worked with emergency services, you're probably aware of that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt, who's going to be presenting on behalf of Fluid IQ.
Hey, Susie, great introduction. I hope we can live up to it. So John Bailey, our CFO, is going to run the slides. My father, the taller, older guy, suffered from lung failure for years, and I still remember the painful 911 calls. I saw emergency medical techs, EMTs, in the middle of the night hold a mask to his face and squeeze air into his lungs dozens of times, gasping for breath as they did it. He died far too young from heart and lung damage. John, next slide. So as Susie said, my name is Matt Vogel, and I'm the CEO of Fluid IQ, a company with a mission to innovate, develop, and deploy fluidic solutions, medical devices that can help people like my father breathe in emergency situations. And our initial product from this platform is called the Hope Invent. It's going to disrupt and replace the existing standard of care, which is the bag valve mask. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Next slide, John. As Susie said, we're asked to come back on. We're asked to share a little short video clip. It's about a minute. And it's about our device, which has been seen globally on Beautiful News. And just a bit of a background, Beautiful News is a content platform which publishes positive news stories. It was launched in South Africa in 2016. And interestingly enough, it's published every day at 4:14 in honor of the exact time Nelson Mandela was released from prison. So a little background. So John, you want to run it?
You can't wait for the world to save you. Sometimes you've got to take a deep breath and do it yourself. My name is Duncan Stevenson. I'm lead engineer for Fluid IQ. Fluid IQ came together in the midst of the pandemic when we realized we needed to do something for humanity. The group evolved and developed, and emergency responders that came on, there were doctors, nurses, patient advocates, all walks of life. We felt we could apply our minds and come up with a solution to solve these problems within the pandemic. Thousands of ventilators have been distributed globally, but unfortunately the complexity of these devices often overwhelms medical professionals. The idea was to create something which is simple, easy to understand, and accessible. Hope Invent was the baby that was born out of, between the group, thousands of prototypes and iterations. The Hope Invent is the world's first 3D printed, no moving parts, no electrics, low cost, and rapidly deployable handheld ventilator. Hopefully this means that medical professionals around the world, even in the poorest of countries, are able to take control and are empowered to help their communities. What stemmed from a desire to protect my family may just be the tool that can save millions.
Yeah, thanks, John. So why the need to replace a 70-year-old technology, the bag valve mask? Well, the current standard for providing emergency resuscitation, the BVM or bag valve mask, is highly labor intensive and is prone to error 70 to 90% of the time, causing either too much pressure or too much volume of air to be squeezed into the lungs. And I know you've seen it countless times on television shows like ER, maybe hopefully not out in the real world, where EMTs like this are squeezing a bag which contains 2.5 times the recommended volume of air that's inhaled or exhaled on a single breath. And in high stress environments, they're squeezing too much in. And regardless of the skill level, whether they're a physician or an EMT, inadvertent lung damage occurs because of this, resulting in longer hospital stays and increased mortality. But here's another reason that you should care. Everyone that's listening or watching this presentation will probably be given this manual breathing, also called being bagged, in your lifetime, as the manual bag valve mask is standard of care when you come off anesthesia during most elective procedures. You just don't know it. Next slide, John. So Fluid IQ developed a solution, the Hope Invent. Lipstick size, about 10 grams, disposable, 3D printable, no moving parts, emergency resuscitator, providing lung protective ventilation with hands-free capability. So it's lung protective by internally designed fixed pressure settings, and it's hands-free by not having to squeeze a bag. So it's more sensible ventilation. Next slide, John. So it's simple and elegant. Just connect to an oxygen source or compressed air source with tubing, then to the Hope Invent and directly to the patient. Additional ISO compliant safety components can be easily attached to the circuit. Next slide, John. So really, how does it work? So as oxygen flows through that barbed nozzle on the left into the invent, the resulting jet stream of air attaches to the right side of the lungs, increasing pressure. Once that preset lung protective ventilation pressure is reached, the patent pending geometry is designed such that the feedback flow becomes great enough and it switches from inhalation to exhalation. And this will continue indefinitely as long as there's a supply of oxygen or air, and it operates whether or not the patient is breathing.
One minute.
Next slide, John. So Fluid IQ is a team of multidisciplinary experts, as you've seen, physicians, PhDs, global advocates. And it's really unusual to see a team at this stage of its life cycle with this kind of broad depth of experience, both in medical, clinical, as well as CEOs of startups and exits of various companies. Next slide, John. So we've got validation, a collaborative research agreement with the NIH. They did first in animal studies. They're going to do the first in human study. They've submitted a publication to a major medical journal, 4 patents filed, expected clearance in early 2023. And we just signed, although we haven't announced the company yet, just signed a licensing agreement with one of the world's largest original equipment manufacturers. More to come once the press release comes out in a few weeks. Next slide, John. So Hope Invent is simply the initial medical device in the future product roadmap. $590 million, $600 million, growing to $900 million in the total addressable markets. But as we develop additional products using fluidics, the TAMs grow to the billions of dollars. So last slide, John. So what are we asking for? A $500,000 bridge financing round with the use of funds really to finish the regulatory submission, to look at filing in Indonesia and launching in Indonesia, to maintain and launch additional, protect additional patents, soft launch preparation once we get de novo clearance, and the additional pre-commercial activities. So I think we've got with about 5 or 10 seconds to spare. So thank you for listening, and hopefully you're interested.
Nice job. Love the video. Can't get enough of that video. It just speaks volumes to me. Anybody in the, any of our participants have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I will unmute you so that you can ask. And if not, or if you don't have time to get to your question right now, please feel free to place it in the chat. We'll have Matt and John keep an eye on the chat to make sure that they can answer you. With that, I will go ahead and share my screen once again. So our next presenter is Jay from Idaptic. And Idaptic offers glasses to enhance vision for those people who suffer from age-related macular degeneration, as well as other low vision diseases. So I'm really excited to have him on our platform today. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Susie. Can I share my screen here?
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. Everyone can see that? I'm Jay Cormier, founder and CEO of Idaptic. Here is our latest product, our augmented reality visual aid. In our slide here, you can see Liz. Liz is a working mother. She's got macular degeneration. She is legally blind. She's a physical therapist. This is the first time in her career that she could read the blood pressure cuff. So what are we doing? We are here to help people with macular degeneration and other retinal diseases. If I can get control here, there you go. So retinal diseases impact 400 million people worldwide. The number one cause of retinal disease is age-related macular degeneration, which is almost 180 million people. The next following retinal disease biggest impact is diabetic retinopathy. So what does this do? This affects the central vision. This is your fine or sharp vision, but you always retain your peripheral vision. And this gives us something to work with and optimize. So what do? We enhance vision and adapt to the user. So our technology fundamentally takes in the image from the real world in the front-mounted camera. Our proprietary software processes that image and redisplays it on front of the eyes. You can see our product here. This one happens to be tethered to a cell phone for all the processing and power. But what our proprietary software does is it enhances the image, it can remap the pixels, and it also, most importantly, uses AI and computer vision to adapt to the user's vision as well as their habits and environment. So where to from here? I think I missed, I did miss this slide. Let me just jump back a little bit. Is we do use open market hardware, again, focus on the software. The real key here is this integrates with the real world. It's fully wearable for mobility. You can navigate, you can walk around and use it for a broad variety of tasks. This is an FDA Class 1 exempt device, so no FDA approval needed. We have 6 patents granted and 14 more pending. So sorry about the change of order there. I think this brings me right into our clinical study. So although a clinical study was not required for FDA approval, we felt that this was very important. And what we did was we had 2 main endpoints for our clinical study. One was naturally visual acuity, which is the gold standard. What we saw in our original prototype products was a greater than 3-line improvement in visual acuity. So this was essentially getting people in that 2070 to 2200 range out of the low vision range. Our latest products offer even better results where we're seeing people all the way up to 2400 and beyond, and they're getting a 5 to 6 line improvement, again, getting them down out of the low vision range. So this is a doubling or quadrupling of visual acuity, which is enormous for these people. But more importantly, we wanted a device that could serve for a variety and a wide use of tasks. So our second main endpoint was time tasks of daily living. And this is where we compared people's ability to do tasks with the Idaptic glasses versus their regular glasses. And this was conducted across a range of activities, across a range of distances. And this is where we saw a 5 times ability to complete tasks with Idaptic versus the regular glasses. So this is a huge gain for these people. I should footnote, we are currently running a study for diabetic retinopathy right now. We do have some early data that we will be presenting at the AAO, American Academy of Ophthalmology, in a few weeks. So most importantly, how can this help people? Well, you saw Liz using this at work. We talked about that. Liz is a mom. She has a couple of kids. She's able now to go to the soccer game, watch her 16-year-old and 14-year-old play soccer. You can see her also paying the bills. We have Chuck over here. Chuck is, you can see, probably not doing the best thing with our glasses. He's out gambling at the casino. Chuck is 2400, so that means he's only count fingers. He brought Idaptic into his optometrist, and the optometrist was stunned to see Chuck reading with 20/50 vision. This is a huge gain. Sam down in the bottom left-hand corner loves to travel. He's got retinoschisis. Unfortunately, that drove him into retirement, but he is now able to go on cruises. In the background there, you see him cruising to Cabo with the Idaptic glasses. He can see the elevator buttons. He can navigate around and function normally. So where to from here? We certainly have started to see increased revenues after we released our 2 key products in the second half of last year. Our first key patent was granted back in 2020. So as I said, we have a clinical study going on now with diabetic retinopathy. This will increase the TAM by roughly 50% to 300 million people worldwide. We do have an open round that's oversubscribed with 500K still open if people are interested, and we'll be raising on that for the rest of the year. Next year, we're moving into seeing a strong showing in our optometry channel. We have an installed base of over 100 users, and then we're going to grow that through next year with our fundraising, and then move into our next funding round for growth. So with that, just a real quick on the team, it is a unique combination of executives with successful exits on the technology side and some of the leading medical experts in the field. We have probably the strongest advisory board, certainly of anyone in this space, and maybe one of the strongest in any eye care space, with some of the leading retina specialists and optometrists in the country and world. So with that, I want to wrap up and say our vision is certainly to be #1 in this nascent multi-billion-dollar visual aid market. This is every bit as big as the hearing aid market, which is $8 billion today. And that is our goal, to be #1. So I would like to thank you. And of course, Chuck here wants to thank you as well, so he can continue gambling.
Love it. Thank you so much, Jay. I'm so happy to see somebody doing something in the eye care space. I just feel like it's such an area ripe for innovation, and I really appreciate the work that you're doing. Does anybody have any questions for Jay? And at the same time, I saw for Matt and John, there's a question for you in the chat. All right, I do not see any hands raised, but if you have come up with any questions for Jay that you want to post, please go ahead, and we'll make sure that we keep reminding our hosts to take a look at the chat. With that, our next presenter is going to be the Airing Smart Mask, presented by Stefan Marsh. Stefan is making, and his team are making, a smart replacement mask for non-compliant CPAP patients, which we all know many are not compliant, who can't tolerate the therapy due to the discomfort that they have when they exhale. So with that, go ahead and take it away, Stefan.
Sure, thank you very much. Let me share this screen, get to the presentation, and see if it launches. There you go. So we have it there.
Perfect.
So first of all, I want to thank you, Susie, for the invitation to present our investment opportunity. So 936 million people suffer from a serious health problem called sleep apnea. Each night when they go to sleep, they stop breathing repeatedly, sometimes for more than a minute. This decreases the oxygen in their blood to dangerously low levels. And if it's left untreated, it can cause strokes, heart disease, diabetes, and much more. So it's really an unforgiving condition. It needs to be treated. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when some serious health issue is going to arise. And the good news is that there is treatment. It is, if I can make my, go to the next slide. How would I get this to go to the next slide? Well, I don't know how to make my presentation go to the next slide.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I'm kind of stuck here.
Oh,
there we go.
There you go.
Okay, anyway, so it's called CPAP therapy. It stands for continuous positive airway pressure. It's basically a box with a motor and a fan blade, and it blows air up a hose and into a mask or a nose pillow. And this is designed to keep your airways open, or your soft tissue open, so that you can continue to breathe. Unfortunately, many patients cannot tolerate it due to the continued forced air. So I can explain that, why this is. The air that's flowing at them when you're inhaling is fine. It feels like you're getting a complete breath. It's a bit of an assist. But when you go to exhale, you're actually competing with this therapy airflow that's coming at you, and it's very difficult. I'm kind of reminded of being a kid sticking your head out the window and the air's blowing at you and you feel like you just can't breathe. But when you have this on at night and you're trying to sleep and you can't breathe, you just can't get your air out, it's really a panic. And a lot of people rip the mask off and they end up throwing their CPAP machine in the closet and becoming non-compliant. So this means that every night, millions of people are going to sleep at a greater risk because they're not getting the therapy that they need because they just can't tolerate it. But AirRing has a solution. So we have something called the Smart Mask. It's based on our innovative air switch technology and our sensing of the pressure right at the patient's nostrils. So together, we can control the continuous airflow that's coming from the CPAP machine and provide a new level of comfort to the CPAP patient. We know when the patient is inhaling, and we pass the full therapy airflow to the patient when they need it. But when they're exhaling, we divert that forced air and allow them to exhale almost unimpeded for a much more natural and comfortable exhalation. There's no other system out there that can do this. And so we built test units, sleep test units. We started some informal testing with apnea patients, got their feedback. Actually, it was very valuable. We improved the performance of the machine, but basically the feedback says they love the relief and they want the product as soon as possible. So we demonstrated these sleep test units to a large East Coast respiratory equipment manufacturer, and they were so impressed with it that they gave us a purchase order for $1.5 million because they thought that they could reclaim some of those patients that were become non-compliant because of this discomfort, as well as there's a huge number of people out there that have sleep apnea that won't be treated because they won't get diagnosed because they don't think that they can tolerate the therapy. So based on the PO, we decided we should move towards the FDA approval process. We hired a consulting firm who specializes here. They've identified the 510K program, the fast track program. They've identified the predicates that's required for that. They've completed a plan, a regulatory plan, and think that we can get through the FDA approval in about 18 months. So to fund this productization effort, we're raising $4 million. And with this money, we're going to work with specialists. Product Insight is a company who's developed a lot of medical devices. They can take our working test units and do the design for manufacturing, and in fact, help us get into manufacturing. We'll continue to work with QRX partners to get through the FDA approval process. And Dr. Gil Martin is on our medical advisory board, who's a pulmonologist, and will be overseeing the clinical studies that are going to be required. AirRing will support all of these efforts. We have a test and development lab we'll maintain, and we will continue to protect our intellectual property. Technologies around this, I think there are like about 30 patents issued and 50 some more that are applied for internationally. So we will continue to
1 minute.
Oh, great. So when we get the Smart Mask manufactured, FDA approved, and shipped to our customer and generating revenues, we'll then continue to finish the development of the micro CPAP, which is a real game changer for the CPAP world. But we also have another micro medical oxygen concentrator for those people who live on oxygen therapy. So with a successful Smart Mask, and these products in our pipeline, we think will be primed for a pretty significant acquisition from the large players. And I think that'll offer a great return for the AirRing investor. So that's our story. Any questions?
Great, thank you. Great presentation. We've got a hand up, so I'm going to go ahead and let.
Yeah, just wondering what the pressure differential is with this device between inhalation and exhalation.
So that's the amazing thing about this air switch technology. We can literally control with very fast response, milliseconds, to go from either 0 to 100% of your full therapy setting on your CPAP machine. So we can virtually give you your therapy when you need it. And when you absolutely do not need it, and it's a conflict with you exhaling, we can literally dial it down to about 0.
Got it. So it's dynamic. And do you know why doctors are not prescribing BiPAP machines to these patients?
Well, it's a real hassle or a challenge because they're much more expensive and the insurance companies really don't like to reimburse it. So they make you have to go through a lot of hoops to get that. There's quite a few number of people that do use BiPAP, but the vast majority out there are straight CPAP machines, and they just basically blow air at a particular setting at you all the time. And it's difficult.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Great. So if there are any further questions, please go ahead and ask those in the chat. I'm going to introduce our last presenter. We did have one more on the docket, May Dix, who have elected to move to our next demo day because they weren't quite ready to present today. So computational life will be our last one. And Alessandro, even though David's name is up here, Alessandro is actually going to be presenting on their behalf. And computational life is actually working on the first digital twin for shock patients. So again, another product that's really needed on the market, and I'm really excited to hear a presentation. So with that, Alessandro, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Hello, I'm Alessandro, I'm the CEO of Computational Life. Let me share my screen for you. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. This is Rob. And he's a cardiac ICU doctor, and he's dealing with Anna, who's a 48 years old woman who received a PCI to save her from a myocardial infarction. But now Anna is suffering from a secondary pathology that is a multi-organ failure that develops when the heart is not able to pump the blood correctly, and it's called cardiogenic shock. And if Anna doesn't get stabilized, her organs will continue to fail and she may die in a few days. Okay. Rob thinks that with a PVAD, that is a particular device, a minimally invasive device for helping the heart to pump blood, combined with dopamine, would work for Anna, would recover Anna in no more than 3 days. And he's confident of that, but cardiogenic shock is a very difficult pathology to treat. You never know with cardiogenic shock. There's too little evidence and guidelines are too vague and generic to help in real life situations. So if it doesn't work, Anna will face an even worse situation. She could suddenly die and prolong by several days her stay in the ICU. So Rob says, okay, better do what I always did with my mentor. I will implant an ECMO that is a very invasive mechanical support system and monitor Anna's condition for 1 or 2 days more and eventually add a PVAD. After 2 days, Anna performs well, and Rob eventually implanted PVAD as he wanted to do before and then administers dopamine doses. After 3 days, Anna's heart is self-sufficient and she's moved to a lower intensity ward. Rob is happy with that, he's satisfied with the outcome, but he continues thinking if his initial idea would have worked for Anna, would have worked better for Anna. He wonders if a less intensive and invasive treatment was possible for Anna. But the problem is that he will never know. So this situation is very common in cardiogenic shock. Following myocardial infarction, a lot of patients have cardiogenic shock. But since there's little evidence to know what really works for cardiogenic shock, doctors are accustomed to treating patients of this type with a step-by-step approach. That is basically an empirical approach. So it depends on hospitals and physician capability. Cardiogenic shock is a great problem, is a huge problem. It affects more than 200,000 individuals only in the US and Europe every year. And we've seen Rob doing great with Anna, but the actual mortality rate ranges between 20 and 50%. It's a very, very big addressable market with a huge economic burden for the health systems all over the world. So what really lacks the doctor is the ability to predict the effects of the treatment and to avoid uncertainty and error. Our competitors out there, they normally stratify the risk of patients, but they try to use statistical formulas to understand where the patients will go. But this to date didn't change the prognosis. With Altigos, that is our first product, we want to have a significant impact on cardiogenic shock, and we want to provide a digital twin of the patient that predicts patient-specific effects of the treatment in real time and with no more information that is very important that is normally available for the hospital. Our value proposition is huge. We can decrease the mortality, we can decrease the length of stay, we can decrease the usage of superfluous treatments, and we can decrease also the readmission rate. What is really important is that our system, our software is not a simple AI software. It's a mathematical model. It's a computational model of the cardiovascular system and of the full body physiology. So it's a revolutionary product in this field. And what we can do is what we can do is to predict any effect for the patient. We can also predict what are the effects of the devices, of the drug, of the physical activity of the patient. We can say if it's the right time to win the patient. We have a very simple, easy to use user interface. We already validated it, and we also validated in vivo and in vitro the technology with the FDA, and we have an ongoing clinical validation. We are a platform technology. We can apply to several other pathologies and also to B2B businesses, medtech companies or pharmaceutical companies. We're raising 6.5 million in our current seed round. We already raised a little bit of that, and we're looking forward to receive more interest from you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Great job. Thank you, Alessandro. Does anyone have any questions for Computational Life? Please feel free to raise your hand or post it in the chat. Well, with that, we'll stay on for a couple more minutes. I would definitely like to thank Alera Health, the team from AMA. Really appreciate everything that you guys have done, and of course, all of our presenters. We really do thrive on the feedback that we get from these events. So if you guys have any feedback, I send surveys out after these events every time, and I very rarely get feedback. So if you have any feedback, please feel free to just message me with it. I'm good, bad, or ugly. I always want to hear it. And I really just thank each and every one of you for your time today, for joining us, and for listening to our great presentations. And with that, you are free to go. Thank you so much for a great event.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Susie. Thanks, Darby.